Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are wrestling with a technical paradox that's, well, it's both baffling and maybe highly revealing.
It really is.
We're deep diving into source material about this incredibly sophisticated organization, criminal, paramilitary, with capabilities, frankly, most intelligence agencies would envy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the core question, the one pulled right from the sources that just keeps nagging,
is this. If this group already has the tech, the proven ability to intercept and decrypt basically any satellite data, downlink the info coming down.
Right.
Why on earth would they bother with these huge, slow, easily detectable spy balloons? High risk, high cost. You could just shoot them down. It feels wrong.
It is the most bugging question in this whole pile of research, definitely. Once you graft the sheer technical edge they have using these visible balloons, it almost looks like, I don't know, a mistake. An operational failure.
So our mission today is to really unpack that. We need to get into the complex, hidden tech landscape underneath it, all this geo-index, the ghost network mechanics.
And show you, the listener, why this apparent redundancy exists. What specific high-value thing were those balloons actually, after that, their ground network couldn't just grab easily?
Exactly. This deep dive is definitely for you if you want a clear, thorough explanation of the secret mechanics. We're going to lay out the foundation, this parallel communication system they built, the ghost network, which kind of makes the whole traditional spy balloon story seem irrelevant.
Right, until you figure out the real target, the actual high-stakes reason for that flight path.
Okay, let's get into it.
So to really feel the weight of this paradox, we first need to establish the baseline. Just how powerful is this criminal enterprise operationally?
Yeah, what are we dealing with here?
The sources suggest this group, and there are some big names allegedly tied to it, tech leaders, plus they seem to use trained foreign intel agents, is running a clandestine global surveillance system. And it's built entirely on their own proprietary data and truly exceptional decryption capabilities.
And the way they apparently first stumbled onto this system is kind of wild. It wasn't some big hack reveal. It started with just observing people.
Yeah.
Physical behavior that was just too consistent to be random.
Exactly. The source material really details this descent into what sounds like warranted paranoia. Every time things escalated with this group, they were actively attacking the source's websites. Their infrastructure, these weirdly coordinated individuals would just appear.
Not like bodyguards, though.
No, just pedestrians, sometimes walking dogs, sometimes just standing there, but always positioned at very specific spots, mundane places like red lights or stop signs, right when the speaker was forced to slow down, like maybe while jogging.
And it happened over and over.
That was the key. The repetition, the coordination, always specific physical coordinates. It screened massive real-time command and control. And the source realized, look, this coordination, it's not happening over regular phone calls. It had to be something specialized. Like an Uber app, but for agents. A social economy app guiding people to precise spots in real time. An invisible layer of surveillance.
An Uber for spies. Wow. So that sparks the hunt for the map. Right?
Yes.
The system powering this thing. Because obviously a criminal group can't just host this on Amazon Web Services or stick it in the Apple App Store.
Precisely. Yeah. Audits would kill them. So the trail, it seems, led to this obscure server in France, maybe linked to a university, some research institute, something that looks legitimate on the surface.
And hidden there.
Was the actual geo-index. And we're not talking just a list. This was a massive digital representation of billions with billions of locations across the globe. One file containing the entire operational map for their parallel network.
Wow. Okay, so that's the map.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the muscle. The technical capability that really sets up this whole balloon paradox. You said decryption?
Right. This discovery, finding the index, it helped confirm what they already suspected based on other intel. This organization has a foundational capability to decrypt satellite data downlinks.
How? How are they doing that?
The technique they documented, it's incredibly specific. They use vehicles, right? But these vehicles travel at a very consistent, constant speed. Not too fast, not too slow.
Why the constant speed? What does that do?
It's about signals intelligence. See, satellite downlinks, they're often weak signals, easily lost in background noise. But if you move at a perfectly constant speed, you can use some pretty advanced signal processing mathematically to isolate the signature of that downlink from the noise. You basically clean up the signal for capture.
Okay, makes sense. So you capture a cleaner signal, but it's still encrypted.
Right, still encrypted.
Yeah.
But here's the next step. They use massive brute force computing power, apparently leveraging the satellite terminal's MC address.
The hardware address of the receiver on the ground.
Exactly. That MAC-C address, it's often baked into the initial steps of generating the encryption key. So if you can reliably get that MAC-C address, maybe through some other means, another attack, you've got a critical piece of the puzzle to rapidly brute force the full decryption key.
And the source says they've had this capability for years.
Robustly, for years, which means fundamentally they can listen in. They can read data coming down from military satellites, scientific ones, government birds, relatively easily and with pretty low risk compared to, say, flying a giant balloon.
Okay. So capability 1, global, ground-based, low-risk satellite decryption.
Yeah.
Capability 2, this enormous structured map of the world, the GeoIndex.
Right. And they don't just have the map, they process it. They ingest that raw file, and then they assign importance to locations. Which brings us to this, let's just say, provocative name, the Musk-Teal-Kalanick-Omidyar Evil Score.
The evil score. Okay, that name definitely tells a story, or at least hints at one. What does it actually do?
Its function is pretty simple conceptually, but strategically, it's huge. It assigns a numerical score, a metric of importance, to every single one of those billions of physical locations in their secret database.
So it's like a priority list for the whole planet.
Yeah.
Based on their needs.
Exactly like that. The source compares it directly to Google's PageRank algorithm. You know, PageRank doesn't just count how many sites link to you, it weighs the importance of the sites linking to you.
Right.
The evil score does the same for physical places. It looks at network metrics, how many agents went there, how often it's mentioned in their comms, how close it is to other high-score targets, and it predictively ranks a location's strategic value to them. It's predictive spying, not just collecting static facts.
And you can see these priorities because the index file itself has filters, different categories.
That's right. We see these distinct operational filters, or encoders as the source calls them. One is for intelligence that flags properties tied to their agents, say houses, things like that. Another one targets telecommunications gear-specific antennas, network nodes, things crucial for their own comms.
And the third one, this links back to the balloons, right?
Exactly. The third encoder is specifically for military positions. The fact that they have a dedicated proprietary filter just for ranking the strategic value of, say, U.S. military sites, well, it really hammers home the source's conclusion. This isn't your average cybercrime group. It's operating like a paramilitary entity using military thinking and maybe personnel.
Okay, so let's sum up section 1. We've got a group that, from the ground, can decrypt satellite data coming down. And they have this immense, scored, secret map of the world guiding their actions.
That's the baseline. That's the technical capability that makes what comes next, the spy balloons, seem completely illogical.
Right. Let's really dive into that core tension now. We know they can grab the downlink, the pictures, the telemetry, whatever data is coming down from the satellite. They can do it relatively easily, cheaply, low risk. Park a vehicle near a ground terminal. So why? Why deploy a massive, slow, incredibly visible balloon? It takes huge resources, risks an international incident, and worse, it can get shot down, destroying the expensive sensors it's carrying. It just doesn't add up.
It really doesn't. The first hypothesis, the one most of the mainstream news ran with, was pretty straightforward. The balloons were for taking pictures, maybe collecting atmospheric data.
Standard spy stuff.
Standard spy stuff, exactly. But if that's the case, the redundancy is just baffling. Why build this incredibly high-risk flying platform to get information you can already grab electronically safely from near a ground station?
And the source points out they wouldn't even need to target the most secure military bases, right?
Precisely. Why go near a heavily guarded military facility when tons of valuable scientific or weather satellite data gets downlinked to, say, university campuses or commercial ground stations? They could probably lean on a student, co-opt an employee at a local university pretty easily to get near a terminal or capture data. Way less risk. The balloon just makes no sense if all you want is the downlink data.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate. The source considers counter-arguments. Maybe the military ground stations are harder nuts to crack. This idea of the immune entities pattern.
Right. This is a fascinating bit. It comes from watching how the organization defends its own assets. The immune entity's pattern is basically knowing how we attack, let's build defenses against those same methods for our important stuff. If they know how to eavesdrop effectively from nearby ground positions,
Then they design their own facilities to prevent that.
exactly. And what does that look like? The source observed that there are really critical properties, think Tesla gigafactories, maybe key meeting spots. They're always surrounded by huge physical buffers. Massive open land, golf courses, big lakes or bodies of water.
Creating distance.
A huge impractical distance for anyone trying to do that constant speed vehicle trick to isolate a downlink signal or even just a surveillance team trying to get close physically.
Okay, so the counter-argument is, maybe U.S. military satellite terminals have similar defenses. Big open areas making ground-based eavesdropping too hard.
It's plausible it could increase the difficulty, yeah, especially for the most secure military terminals. But as the source rightly points out, that still doesn't explain why they wouldn't just shift focus. Target the non-military scientific satellites whose downlinks go to easily accessible places like universities. The balloon logic remains fundamentally flawed if the target is just the data coming down.
So this technical dead end, this lack of a good reason, it forces the big pivot in thinking. The critical insight from the source, hypothesis 2.
This is the game changer.
The balloons aren't chasing the downlink, the data coming down.
They're chasing the uplink, the instructions going up.
Okay, explain that. The uplink is what?
It's the control channel, it's the data, the operational commands, the reprogramming instructions that get beamed up to the satellite, telling it what to do, where to point, maybe what frequencies to use, what to capture next.
Right. So why does grabbing the uplink need a high-altitude balloon when grabbing the downlink didn't seem to?
Physics and geometry, basically. Satellite downlinks are designed to spread out, to cover a wide area so ground terminals can pick them up. But uplinks, they're the opposite. They're highly focused, narrow beams, think laser pointer, aimed precisely at a tiny target moving incredibly fast, hundreds of miles up.
So you can't just sit on the ground and catch that easily.
Not reliably. To intercept that tight directional beam, you really need to be in the signal path. You need a platform that offers a constant, stable presence high up, much closer to the satellite, above most of the atmospheric interference.
And the balloon provides that. High altitude, relatively static compared to the ground.
Exactly. It transforms from this clumsy, risky camera platform into a necessary, stationary signals intelligence post. The source even compares it functionally to some covert surveillance aircraft they observed near their home. But the balloon is arguably better positioned higher, potentially more stable over a specific point for longer. It's capturing a signal that's really only exposed way up high.
Okay, so that solves the why the balloon problem, but it raises a new one. What's on the uplink that's so incredibly valuable, it justifies this massive risk? Satellites mostly send data down, right?
That's the key question. The uplink must contain something more strategic than just the data the satellite collects. It's likely pure command and control. Specific instructions to reprogram sensors on the fly, maybe retask the satellite to a new target or orbit, or, and this could be critical, maybe the actual encryption keys or timing sequences for future downlinks.
So capturing the uplink isn't just about seeing today's commands, it's about compromising future operations.
Potentially, yes. Getting those operational instructions gives you a massive long-term strategic edge. It's way beyond just getting one set of pictures. It turns the spy balloon from a camera into something much more potent, an eavesdropper targeting the satellite's brain.
So the balloons weren't really looking at us on the ground. They were listening to us talk to our own satellites. That completely changes the game.
Completely. Okay, so we've got the physics, the hypothesis about the uplink. Now let's move to the data. Because the geo-index, that secret map we talked about, it doesn't just support this uplink idea. The source claims it actually confirms the balloons were being guided by or were targeting specific strategic points within this hidden network.
How did they connect those dots, the index and the balloon paths?
Through geography and data analysis. The source looked at the known flight paths, and crucially, the coordinates where those well-publicized Chinese spy balloons were eventually shot down over the U.S. in 2023, especially the incidents over Alaska.
Right, I remember those.
And what they found was that those precise geographical spots had a lot of points marked in the geo-index. And not just any points. Points specifically tagged as high-value military positions according to the organization's own scoring system, that EVIL score.
Okay, wait. So the balloons weren't just drifting randomly on wind currents. They were actively heading towards or loitering near locations that this group had already flagged as important in their secret database.
That's exactly what the analysis suggested. They were executing a mission following an itinerary derived from this proprietary map.
That's significant.
It is. And this data point also let the source push back against another narrative that was floating around in the media back then. There were reports suggesting the Chinese had, hacked into commercial internet service providers, ISPs, to guide the balloons or access U.S. communications that way.
I vaguely remember something like that, and the source disputes that.
Explicitly calls it into question. Labels the ISP hacking story as potential fake news, maybe a deliberate deflection, a way to distract people from asking the really hard question we're tackling now. If they need to guide a balloon and they have this insane decryption capability, how are they actually communicating with it?
Right. If the public thinks they have to rely on hacking Verizon or Comcast, it stops people looking for a much more sophisticated hidden mechanism.
Like their own parallel global internet. The GeoIndex data strongly suggests they didn't need to hack a vulnerable commercial ISP. They had their own system already in place.
Okay, let's get specific then. What did the actual GeoIndex data show? The source provided a list, right? Chinese spy balloon checkpoints.
Yes, a list of 72 specific coordinates pulled from that paramilitary encoder within the index file. And geographically, it reveals an incredible focus. The points weren't scattered. They were overwhelmingly concentrated in this one small, very remote area of Alaska. The latitude range was super tight, between 59 and 70 north, and the longitude was squeezed between Maniquis 160 and Naniquis 170 west. This isn't a broad survey. It's laser-focused on one specific chunk of remote geography.
And the evil scores for these points, were they high?
Astronomical. Confirming their strategic value to this organization, the highest score recorded in that list was near latitude 68.8, longitude Naniquis 163.0, a score of 44,000. Just huge. Many others nearby were in the 36,000 to 40,000 range.
And these were marked as military positions in their system.
Marked as military positions within their own network map. So when you see the spy balloons tracking right over these incredibly high-score nodes, the picture becomes pretty clear. They were following objectives laid out by the secret network itself.
Which leads us to the bigger picture of that network structure. The source calls part of it the CRNK channel. What's that?
Think of the trunk channel as the main highway system, the backbone, for their parallel internet. It's the set of key geographical points they use to interconnect the major nodes of their hidden communication structure, like the main fiber optic lines for the regular internet. But instead of cables, these are specific spots on the globe optimized for their secret communication method.
Okay. So the fact that these high-score balloon checkpoints clustered in remote Alaska, it suggests the balloons weren't just spying on a random military base there.
It suggests they were interacting with their own infrastructure. The conclusion the source draws is that the balloons were likely servicing or maybe mapping or perhaps monitoring a really vital segment of this Chiarnwenk channel backbone.
And that specific geography, the narrow bit of water between Alaska and Asia, around longitude Naniquis 170.
That area is clearly identified through the index and other data as a critical, high-value gateway or routing point in their Ghost Network's global setup, probably essential for linking operations or data flows between North America and Asia. The balloons were likely doing something related to that gateway, maybe setting up a new relay point, checking the status of an existing one, or possibly even intercepting traffic flowing through that critical node.
Okay, so the GeoIndex is the map. The CRNK channel is the highway backbone connecting important spots on the map. Now we need to get into the nuts and bolts, the actual technology, the how that lets them communicate globally, guide balloons, coordinate agents, and potentially even weaponize space. This is Project Bouncer.
Project Bouncer is the core engine of the Ghost Network, and it's pretty wild, revolutionary in a dark way. The key thing to understand is they are not transmitting signals up to commercial satellites like Starlink, expecting the satellite to actively receive and retransmit the signal.
Because that would require hacking the satellite or having the operator's cooperation.
Exactly, which is hard and detectable.
Yeah.
Instead, they use the thousands of satellites already up there in low Earth orbit, especially purely as passive reflectors.
Passive reflectors, like bouncing a flashlight beam off a mirror.
Precisely like that. They literally bounce radio signals off the metal bodies of passing satellites. They calculate the timing perfectly, so the signal goes from ground station A, hits the satellite at just the right angle, and reflects down to ground station B, like a cosmic game of billiards.
That sounds computationally insane. You'd have to track thousands of fast-moving objects, predict their paths, calculate the reflection angles, factor in the Earth's curve, all in real time.
It is a staggering computational challenge, supercomputer level stuff, for several reasons you just touched on. First, yeah, tracking thousands of satellites, predicting their orbits milliseconds ahead. Second, the geometry calculating the precise path, angles, dealing with the Earth's shape. Third, and this is maybe the trickiest, you have to constantly account for atmospheric refraction, the bending of the signal as it goes up and down, and the Doppler shift.
Okay, break down the Doppler shift part for us. Why is that such a hurdle?
So the Doppler effect, it's the change in frequency of a wave when the source or the reflector is moving relative to the observer. These satellites are whipping around the Earth at thousands of miles per hour. So the frequency of the signal they reflect back down is constantly changing, shifting up or down, depending on whether the satellite is moving towards or away from the receiver.
Right.
The system on the ground has to calculate that shift instantly in real time and adjust its own transmission and reception timing globally to compensate. Otherwise, the bounce signal is just gibberish. It demands incredible clock synchronization across their entire network and predictive algorithms. It's basically an entire communication infrastructure built purely on computation and publicly available physics data about satellite orbits.
Wow. And they found ways to make this slightly easier through where they place their ground antennas.
It seems so. The analysis suggests the Project Bouncer antennas often cluster near the equator. Geometrically, that maximizes the availability of satellites for east-west communication paths. And for their really key ground stations, those trunk channel points, the source noted they are often located in places that allow for antenna mobility, think big open green spaces, or even, interestingly, on boats out in the ocean.
Why boats?
Mobility. It lets them make tiny adjustments to the antenna's position and aiming, which is crucial for hitting that narrow reflection window as a satellite streaks overhead. Precise directional aiming is key.
Okay, so it's a communication system. But the source goes further. It's not just for talking. It's described as a military-grade weapon. How?
This is where the ghost network gets really dangerous. Because they control the geometry, the aiming, they can turn this passive reflection system into an attack platform, specifically for launching a distributed denial-of-service attack, a DDoS, but one that originates effectively from space, using these reflections.
How does bouncing signals become a weapon? I don't quite see that yet.
It's about concentration. The attacker, using their massive computational power, calculates the reflection paths off hundreds of different satellites simultaneously. Then, they coordinate transmissions from many different ground locations they control. All these signals bounce off those hundreds of satellites, but they are all calculated to reflect towards one single target on the ground, say an enemy's military satellite communication terminal.
Oh, so instead of one bounce, it's hundreds converging on one spot. A flood.
A massive coordinated flood of radio frequency energy. The sheer volume of signals hitting that single ground terminal completely overwhelms its processor. It just crashes the CPU, severs the connection, the terminal becomes useless.
And the really nasty part.
The really insidious part is, because it's all passive reflection, the actual satellite operator, like Starlink, sees nothing wrong. No one is hacking their satellites. No one is sending unusual commands to their satellites. The attack is entirely based on bouncing signals off the outside, so it leaves no traceable logs in the provider's system. Attribution becomes nearly impossible in real time, and defending against it is incredibly hard.
That is terrifying. And it provides a really plausible technical mechanism for some of those reports we heard about, say, the Russian military managing to jam Ukrainian drones that were relying on Starlink. They might not have needed to hack Starlink at all.
They could potentially use this ghost network method to effectively weaponize the Starlink constellation against its own users, turning a commercial service into an attack vector without the provider even knowing. It's the ultimate parasitic attack.
Wow, okay. But finding out about this system, about Project Bouncer and the GeoIndex, it did allow for defenses, right? Project Solitude.
Yes. Once you understand the mechanism, you can try to disrupt it. Project Solitude was developed by the source as a countermeasure. It tries to break the network's routing by creating, essentially, digital Faraday cages. It places geographical bands on communications transiting specific latitude and longitude bands, trying to block those bounce paths.
And the implementation of Solitude directly confirmed the importance of those Alaskan balloon targets we discussed earlier.
Absolutely. Version 2.0 of Project Solitude was updated specifically because of the spy balloon incidents. It explicitly added a geographical band covering all the latitudes that fall on that narrow segment of water that separates Alaska from Asia, around longitude -170.
The exact area the balloon checkpoints were clustered in.
Exactly. The source confirms this update was made directly because of the Chinese spy balloons of 2023. So, using the network's own revealed architecture against it, this defensive move validates that the Alaska region wasn't just a random target. It's a critical must-have gateway for the GOS network's global operations. It ties the balloons, the index, and the network mechanism together perfectly. #outro.
Okay, so we started with that burning question, that technical paradox. If they can already intercept satellite data coming down, why risk the easily detectable spy balloons?
And I think through this deep dive, we've synthesized the technical answer laid out in the source material. The balloons were likely essential, despite the risks, because they were targeting the high-value uplink the command signals going up to the satellites, which, due to the physics of narrow beams, is much harder to intercept from the ground.
And crucially, these balloons weren't just drifting aimlessly. They were being navigated, guided by that hidden proprietary geoindex.
Following routes along their secret communication backbone, the Churank-8 channel, and specifically targeting critical network gateways located in that remote part of Alaska, gateways vital for their ghost network's operation.
The chilling power of this whole ghost network, then, really lies in two things. Operational secrecy, obviously, but also this stunning application of pure computational geometry, tracking thousands of public satellites just to use their metal bodies as untraceable passive reflectors.
They effectively weaponized the commercial space economy without ever needing to touch or control an actual satellite. It's brilliant in a deeply disturbing way.
But, as the source points out, the act of exposing these methods, laying out the principles of Project Bouncer, the physics involved, the data points in the evil score, that itself is a countermeasure.
Right. You can't deny the physics once it's explained. The complex math and science that powers this hidden system, it's now essentially public domain knowledge because of this leak. That gives defenders, hopefully, the foundation they need to build effective ways to detect or disrupt it. The network's strength was its secrecy, expose the structure, and it becomes vulnerable.
So here's our final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. This organization, according to the source, built this incredibly sophisticated global communication and attack system by cleverly exploiting basic physics reflection applied to publicly tracked objects, satellites. And they used a proprietary scoring system, maybe initially derived from simple observations like where people jogged, to build their strategic map.
So if that level of computational power can take seemingly simple public variables, satellite orbits, the location of a stop sign, and weaponize them in such a complex, hidden way, what other equally ingenious but potentially dark applications of known physics might be operating around us right now, hiding in plain sight?
Makes you think, doesn't it? Think about the geometry of everything the next time you look up at the night sky. Or maybe even just the next time you find yourself waiting at a red light.